Ever feel like you've stumbled into one of those conversations, where it's part political rally, part like some tech thriller movie, and part, well, just plain bizarre?
Sounds like you've been eavesdropping on some interesting conversations.
That's exactly what we're dealing with today, actually. Someone sent us this XZELLO conversation, and, well, let's just say it feels very 2024. Now,
I'm intrigued.
right. So for those who maybe haven't used Zello, imagine like a live walkie-talkie app, but it's multi-person and everyone's kind of talking over each other. Passions are high, and it can get a little unpredictable, to say the least.
So unlike a chat room where you have, threads and you can edit your posts, Zello's more immediate.
Exactly. Once it's said, it's out there, hanging in the digital airwaves, which makes for some, well, interesting dynamics as well here. But before we get lost in the weeds of this thing...
We need a map.
Exactly, a character map for this wild audio drama. So first up, we have the one, the only, Rambo.
Ah, yes, Rambo. Can't wait to meet him.
You'll know him by the Al Alasi Capies rants, the, how shall we say, colorful language, and a worldview that's a bit of a mix of talk radio and a cyberpunk novel.
Rambo the Enigma. From what you're saying, I'm guessing he's not just a participant in this conversation, but often tries to steer the direction of the whole thing.
You're catching on quick. Whether he's ranting about politics or bragging about hacking skills, which, by the way, we'll get into later, Rambo definitely likes to be heard.
The self-proclaimed captain of the digital ship.
Exactly. Then we have Thomas, who usually tries to play the role of voice of reason, fact-checking Rambo, trying to ground things in reality a bit.
The ever-patient Thomas. Always there to counter Rambo's more outlandish claims. But I'm going to guess, even Thomas has his moments where he gets pulled into the emotional current, revealing his own biases and anxieties.
You've got us all figured out. And to make things even more lively, we have Christina, who, well, she's not afraid to challenge Rambo head-on, especially when it comes to his, let's just say, traditional views.
Christina, the firecracker. I'm already anticipating some fireworks between her and Rambo, especially when it comes to topics like gender roles and equality.
Oh, you can definitely say that again. And of course, like any good chorus, we have our other voices chiming in, adding fuel to the fire, dropping truth bombs, the usual Zello chaos.
A true digital symphony. It's important to remember, though, even those who speak less frequently in these kinds of settings contribute to the overall atmosphere. They help create this digital echo chamber, which amplifies certain viewpoints and makes it really difficult for other perspectives to break through.
It's like a digital microcosm of society, isn't it?
Precisely. And speaking of society, we are talking about an election year, and as you might imagine, politics weaves its way into the Zello conversation in some interesting ways.
Oh, yeah. You can't escape it, can you? Even when they're talking about, say, whether a woman should be president, which, by the way, gets very heated very quickly.
And that's where things get really fascinating. Those off-the-cuff remarks, especially from someone like Rambo, often reveal a lot about their worldview, their anxieties about power, gender roles, societal change. It goes way beyond who sits in the Oval Office.
It's like that moment when Rambo flat out states, "A woman is not designed to run the greatest country." I mean, wow, where do you even begin to unpack that?
Well, it's certainly jarring, isn't it? But his language points to a certain mindset that we're seeing more and more, particularly among a certain demographic. This idea that a woman is not designed to lead suggests a belief system rooted in traditional gender roles, where men are the natural leaders, the decision makers. You get the idea.
And it's not just about the presidency either. He goes on about Kamala Harris being just waiting for other men to tell her what to do. I mean, that paints a pretty bleak picture.
It really does, and it reveals this deep distrust of women in positions of authority. They're often framed as puppets, not independent actors. This type of language, it's meant to undermine their agency and reinforce a certain power structure, wouldn't you say?
Totally. And then to make it even more contradictory, he adds, "I would rather have a competent woman than a senile man any day." Like his ideal woman leader is still hypothetical.
Exactly. He set up this impossible standard, this mythical, competent woman, which allows him to hold on to his views while appearing open-minded. It's a way of deflecting criticism without actually addressing his own biases.
And we can't forget that completely out-of-left-field rant about women and, well, I won't repeat it, but it involved ropes and was wildly inappropriate.
It's shocking, yes, but unfortunately not all that surprising. It speaks to a larger issue of misogyny, especially in online spaces where people feel emboldened by anonymity.
It's a stark reminder that these aren't just intellectual debates we're talking about. They're deeply intertwined with personal beliefs and biases that shape how these individuals see the world.
And understanding those underlying feelings, those anxieties about shifting power dynamics and societal norms, is crucial if we want to make any sense of this Zello conversation.
So we've gone from heated political debate to, well, tech conspiracy theories, because why not?
And this is where the nature of Zello, this push-to-talk format, becomes really important. It's raw, unfiltered, and there's no time for second thoughts or editing.
It's like we're plugged into their stream of consciousness, which in this case is full of paranoia about, well, technology itself.
And that's what's so interesting. They're simultaneously drawn to the power of technology, yet deeply distrustful of its potential. It's like a love-hate relationship fueled by a sense of both empowerment and vulnerability.
Like when Rambo starts bragging about being able to hack into anyone's phone.
His claims, although likely exaggerated, do tap into this widespread fear of surveillance. It's this feeling of being watched, tracked, manipulated by unseen forces, whether it's the government or big tech companies.
Which is ironic, considering they're all on Zello, an app that literally relies on internet connectivity.
Precisely. It highlights that complex relationship so many have with technology. They're drawn to its possibilities to connect with like-minded people, yet suspicious of its potential for misuse.
It's almost as if they see themselves as, like, digital rebels fighting back against a system they don't understand but deeply distrust. Maybe that's part of the appeal of Zello in the first place.
That sense of control, of agency, in a world that increasingly feels out of control, definitely plays a role. They found their digital bunker where they can share anxieties, reinforce beliefs, and find solace in their own little community.
So we've got politics, tech conspiracies, and trust me, this Zello conversation is just getting warmed up. You know, for all this talk about hacking and digital bunkers, what really gets me about this Zello group is how, well, human it all feels. Even with the wild theories and arguments, you get these glimpses of genuine connection, shared experiences.
It's a good point. Even in these niche online spaces, we sometimes forget there are real people behind the avatars, people with their own histories, anxieties.
Right, like out of nowhere, someone will mention an old-time radio show, Suspense, the Kingston Trio. It's like a time capsule.
And those references, they tell us a lot. They hint at the age group, shared cultural touchstones. This is pre-internet, even pre-cable TV for some of them. These shows, they shaped how these people see the world.
It's like a secret handshake, a hey, I get you kind of thing.
Exactly. And on that note, there's this story one of them tells about a customer in a pharmacy getting offended when offered help carrying his things.
Oh, yeah. That one was something else.
It sounds mundane, but it opens up a window into how they see the offline world. You know, perceptions of disability, pride, the assumptions we make.
These aren't just disembodied voices. They're people with lives, jobs, everyday encounters that shake how they act online, too.
And those little details, those peeks into their daily routines, that's where we get the real insights, more than any rant or conspiracy theory.
It's the difference between, like, reading a news story versus having coffee with someone face-to-face.
Exactly. The human element adds so much nuance. So as we go deeper into the Zello world, remember, we're not analyzing data points. We're trying to understand people.
It makes you wonder, though, what draws someone to a platform like Zello to begin with? That live, unfiltered, kind of chaotic energy.
Well, in a world of curated social media, picture-perfect online lives, maybe there's something refreshing about Zello's rawness. It's a space to be yourself, no pressure, no filters.
Like the digital equivalent of a late-night diner.
Exactly. Finding your tribe, even if it's in the most unexpected corner of the internet. That sense of belonging is powerful, especially now.
So we've got our cast of characters, the wild themes, these moments of surprising human connection. But what's the big picture here? Why should our listeners care?
Now that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? This Zello deep dive, it offers a few key takeaways, I'd say.
All right, lay it on us. What insights have we gleaned today?
Firstly, it's a prime example of the echo chamber in action. Inside this group, beliefs are reinforced, biases confirmed, dissenting voices don't really stand a chance.
Trapped in their own little information bubbles.
Exactly. And this is a big deal, especially now with misinformation running rampant. When you only hear what you already believe, it's easy to dismiss anything else as fake news, propaganda, the enemy.
A recipe for polarization, both online and off.
Exactly. And this leads us to takeaway number 2, the struggle to be heard. In this Zello conversation, it's constant interruptions, everyone talking over each other.
Vying for the digital microphone.
And this feeling, the sense that you're shouting into the void, it's something a lot of people can relate to, even outside of Zello. It's part of our fast-paced, always-on culture.
We're all craving connection, but we're too busy trying to be heard to actually listen.
Exactly. Which brings us to the final takeaway, and this one's actually hopeful. Even with the arguments, the echo chamber, there's a sense of community in this group.
They might disagree on everything, but there's shared history, inside jokes, a comfort in knowing you're not alone.
And that's what makes this Zello conversation so interesting. It's like a mini version of the human experience online. Conflict, connection, and searching for a place to belong.
So where do we go from here? We've analyzed the conversation, the themes, the hidden meanings. What's the final takeaway for our listeners?
It's easy to get caught up in the specifics of this one Zello group, but they're really just a small part of something much bigger, right?
Absolutely. Think of it as a case study in online tribalism. It's everywhere these days. Yeah, it's not just politics anymore, is it? It's everything. Fandoms, lifestyle choices, heck, maybe even what brand of coffee you drink. Everyone's got their tribe.
Exactly. And while finding your people online can be great, it does come with a downside.
Which is?
When the echo chamber starts to feel like reality. When you only hear from people who already agree with you, it's easy to dismiss other viewpoints, to see the world in black and white.
And that's when things can go really wrong. That kind of us versus them thinking, it's how misinformation spreads, how extremism takes root.
Exactly. And it can have real-world consequences.
Which brings us to the big question for our listeners, doesn't it? In this crazy digital world, how do we find that balance between seeking out communities that make us feel seen, understood, but also staying open to different perspectives, even the ones that challenge us?
It's a tough one. We all want to feel like we belong, but we also have a responsibility to stay informed, to think critically about the information we're consuming, to resist that echo chamber pull.
It's like, how do we avoid getting so comfortable in our online tribes that we forget how to have a conversation with someone who sees things differently?
And that's the real challenge, isn't it? To bridge that gap.
Maybe that's the biggest takeaway from all of this. It's not just about understanding this one weird Zello group. It's about recognizing those same patterns, the echo chambers, the tribalism, the shouting matches in our own online lives.
Exactly.
So what can we do about it? Any practical advice for our listeners who are, trying to navigate this digital minefield?
Well, it starts with asking yourself some tough questions. Where am I getting my information from? Who am I surrounding myself with online? Am I really open to hearing different points of view?
Because those answers, even if they're not always easy to face, they matter. They shape how we see the world, how we interact with others, even how we vote.
They do.
It's a conversation worth having, that's for sure. And on that note, I want to thank you and, of course, all our listeners for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time.